All right. Well, there was a little boy who'd been playing with his friends out in the mud puddle all day, and he was covered from head to toe with mud. And so he comes into the house, and there's his mom there in the kitchen, and he looked at her and he says, and, he was just covered with mud. And he says to her, he says, "Do you know who I am?" And mom, we're playing a little game, kind of like peekaboo with an older kid. Says, "No, who are you?" And he says, "Wow." He says, "Mrs. Jones was right. She said that I was so dirty my own mother wouldn't even know me." So sometimes maybe we feel that way about ourselves. Maybe we feel like we're so covered up. Maybe we feel, even sometimes maybe we feel dirty in that sense. That's a kind of awful way to feel, but sometimes I think as humans, sometimes we feel that way. It's not true, but sometimes we feel that way. Or sometimes we wonder, does my parent, my divine parent, even recognize me? Am I so covered up? Am I so separated? Does God even know who I am? We feel that way sometimes, don't we? And Lent is that time, again, to begin to really consciously let go of that. Those are false ideas. They're ideas that we do get as human beings. Maybe those ideas of separation come because maybe we've had to endure some hardships that we couldn't seem to make that connection with love or with solutions. And maybe it was hard to see. Kind of, again, like Gayla was just sharing, like sometimes you have to look, right? And sometimes it feels like maybe you don't find God. God's always there. God's sustaining us, but maybe there have been some hard times where it felt like, I don't know, I feel disconnected. Or maybe we, as sort of in the song that Eric and Kyle were bringing to us, maybe sometimes we think, oh, I've done such bad things, that surely God's rejected me. And we reject ourselves. That God's never rejecting us, by the way. You know that one, right? We know who rejects us. Who is it? It's ourselves. Ourselves reject us. Okay. So, or sometimes maybe it's things that were done to us. That's something that happens sometimes if we've been abused or harmed in some way. But that person that did that perpetrated that, doesn't take responsibility for it. It can be a real hard thing to get through that and get it. It wasn't about me. That was something that person did, and I'm not taking on that shame, and I'm not taking on that hurt. That's not mine. And learning sometimes is a process to learn to hand that back, Or if we grew up in a family where there was addiction, again, we can feel like, oh, was that my fault? Or if we've lived with that as an adult, within ourselves or somebody else, we have to learn, no, that's not mine, and hand it back. That's a disease. It had nothing to do with who I am. So we learn over time to not take on those thoughts or those feelings that I'm a bad person, or that I'm so covered up, or that I'm so, quote, dirty, that I'm not connected to God, that my own divine parent wouldn't even recognize me.